On November 27th, a construction crane at Sao Paulo's World Cup Stadium site collapsed and killed 2 workers on the ground below. And this, for many Brazilians, renewed their fears that there could be some sort of bigger debacle when their country hosts the World Cup starting in June 2014. Arena Corinthians is a particularly important part of Brazil's efforts to host the 2014 World Cup, in part because the opening game will be played there. Brazil's bid to host the World Cup has been problematic from the beginning. There's been a tremendous amount of pressure associated with getting the stadiums for the World Cup ready on time. After all, there are 12 of them scattered throughout a country that's bigger than the continental United States. And Arena Corinthians, where the accident occurred, represents a lot of those problems. Work on the Arena Corinthians started in May 2011. That was a full year after work started at most of the other 11 stadiums being used during the Cup. When there were protests in Brazil in June by more than 1 million Brazilians upset with their government, lots of people focused on stadiums for the Cup and specifically Arena Corinthians as symbols of waste. The total amount of money being spent on these stadiums is about $3.5 billion. A lot of Brazilians think that that amount has been inflated due to the inept kind of planning that led to the late start of Arena Corinthians, and many people think that that money should have been spent on schools and hospitals instead. Part of the reason the stadium construction projects have been so controversial is because the circumstances really have changed in Brazil on a number of fronts. Back in 2007, the country was growing at a pace of about 5 to 6% a year. This is an economy, they just announced this week, shrank in the third quarter. And people really thought that the World Cup would be an excuse to not only make investments in new infrastructure for their soccer teams, but also in public transport. Well, here we are, more than 6 years later, and a lot of that hasn't panned out. It's very important for both the Brazilian government and the Brazilian people to get this World Cup right. You have billions of people watching on TV. Brazil also has aspirations that go far beyond where it is today. This is a country that has made tremendous progress over the last 15 years and wants the World Cup to be a validation of its status as a rising economic and political power. So obviously any embarrassment would cut deeply into that image.